In a dark alley, two men corner a scared lady. She trembles and tries to warn them to stay back, saying she will scream. But the two men keep moving closer, planning to hurt her. Suddenly, another man appears and quickly knocks them down. He checks if the lady is all right, and she thanks him for helping her. She looks weak and unsteady, so he offers to help her get somewhere safe to calm down. Later, the man sits in his room. His name is Hayes Han, a law student at the well-known K University. His phone rings, and it's Jet, someone he hasn't heard from in a long time. Hayes answers the call, jokingly calling Jet Mr. Prosecutor and asking why he is calling. Jet says Hayes always makes him call first, but Hayes explains that he avoids bothering Jet when he's busy catching criminals. Jet then says he needs a favor. The next day, Hayes stands in the street, dressed neatly, looking at his phone. He can't believe Jet has set him up on a blind date when he promised himself not to date until he becomes a prosecutor. Soon, a woman walks up and introduces herself as Nyla Yoon. Hayes is surprised by how beautiful she is. Later, they sit together in a cafe. Both are silent and awkward, while Hayes quietly worries, realizing he doesn't know how to act since he's never been on a date before. Hayes eventually asks Nyla what she likes to do for fun. She blurts out that she likes to chop, dunk, and bury, but quickly corrects herself, saying she actually enjoys making kimchi. She keeps fidgeting, and Hayes realizes she's just as nervous as he is. He tries to tell her to relax, saying this isn't a job interview. But Nyla takes it too seriously, shifting in her seat, which makes Hayes tell her not to get that comfortable. She seems distracted, as if listening to someone, then quickly says she's just talking to herself. But Hayes notices the small ear and wonders if someone is giving her instructions. In reality, Nyla is receiving messages from her gang members, who are telling her to act like a proper lady. These gangsters are sitting not far from their table, arguing among themselves. Hayes notices the tough-looking men and quietly wonders why people like that are even in the cafe. As the date becomes less awkward, Hayes starts enjoying himself. But when they leave the cafe, he realizes the gangsters are following them. Thinking it's best to lose them, he pulls Nyla aside and urges her to run with him. But as they turn a corner, they run straight into another group of thugs. Hayes wants to retreat, but the thugs block their way. Even though he's scared, he tells Nyla to stay behind him. The thugs laugh, mocking him for trying to act like a hero. Hayes knows this isn't like the scenes he imagines in his head. This is real life. Soon, Nyla's gang catches up to them. They tell Nyla she can't just run off like that and notice the thugs. The gangsters tell her not to worry, saying they'll handle the troublemakers so she can enjoy her date. Nyla tells Hayes that they should leave, and as they walk away, the sounds of fighting echo behind them. Hayes can hear the gangsters beating up the thugs who tried to block their way. As they move further, Hayes keeps hearing the gangsters calling Nyla boss. This triggers a memory in his mind. He remembers something Jet once told him, a warning about a gang led by a young woman around his own age. The more he thinks about it, the more he realizes the truth. Nyla is that boss. Panic slowly builds inside him as he understands he might be in serious trouble. Later, they arrive at a hotel. Nyla takes a shower and goes straight to bed as if everything is normal. Meanwhile, Hayes stands alone after finishing freshening up himself. He stares around the quiet room, unsure of what to do next. His mind races with different thoughts, imagining all sorts of possibilities. Jet spends his evening at a bar, trying to relax and have some fun. The man sitting with him orders the attendants to give Jet the best service since he's a prosecutor. The man thanks Jet for arranging a meeting between his daughter and what he calls a decent young man. Jet, however, says he's actually worried that the guy might not be good enough for the man's daughter. As the man tries to respond, a phone suddenly rings, and he immediately snaps in irritation, reminding everyone he had told them earlier to switch off their phones. But Jet calmly says it's his phone and answers the call. On the other end, Hayes sounds frustrated as he complains that thugs followed him all through the date. Jet casually tells him to ignore them, saying Nyla is pretty, as if that makes everything fine. Hayes, still upset, says that's not the real problem. Jet then says he doubts Hayes will be able to stop seeing Nyla anyway. This leaves Hayes confused, not understanding what Jet means by that. Back at the bar, the man asks Jet if his daughter failed to impress Hayes. Jet answers that he doesn't think that's the case. After ending the call, Jet simply enjoys his drink, while Hayes, on the other side of the call, sits in confusion, wondering what Jet is planning. Soon after, Hayes receives a message from his mother. She tells him that the property owner of their family shop is a kind person and even said he wants to treat Hayes to a meal. Attached to the message is a picture of his mom standing with someone Hayes instantly recognizes, one of Nyla's gang members. His heart sinks. Fear floods his mind as he realizes that his mother is now connected to Nyla's gang. To Hayes, this feels like a silent warning or a threat. A few days later, Nyla stands in the middle of the street, looking down at her phone. She notes to herself that Hayes is running late. Her thoughts drift, and she quietly admits that she still isn't used to dating. But deep down, she remembers her father's final wish that she should try. And because of that wish, she doesn't know how to refuse this whole situation. In the past, Nyla remembers a moment when her father, pretending to be seriously ill, sat coughing up what looked like blood. He told her that his time was almost over, and that was why he had made her take over the gang. He said his last wish was to see her get married before he passed away. He explained that she needed a smart and capable man by her side. Nyla, seeing her father's weak condition, agreed without hesitation, wanting to make him happy. What she didn't realize was that her father was faking the whole scene, using ketchup hidden behind him to stage the illness. Later, in the present, Hayes meets up with Nyla. He apologizes for being late, but Nyla calmly says she doesn't mind waiting. Together, they head out for another hangout. Hayes wants to relax and enjoy the time, but Nyla's gang members continue to follow them, making it hard for him to fully enjoy the moment. During the outing, Nyla says she needs to use the restroom. While she's gone, her gang members casually sit with Hayes. They ask if their presence makes him uncomfortable, then explain that there's nothing they can do about it. They need to protect their boss. They tell Hayes he should get used to having them around, insisting they aren't as bad as he might think. One of them even offers him an energy drink. Hayes accepts it and drinks without suspecting anything. He starts to think that maybe being gangsters doesn't automatically make them bad people. What he doesn't know is that the drink is laced with something. Hayes asks if the gang plans to follow them everywhere. One of the men assures him that it won't be all the time, only in certain situations or places. Soon, Nyla returns. Later, they're seen together at the hotel. Nyla opens up to Hayes, telling him that no man has ever approached her before. She says she believes it's because men don't find her attractive. Hayes, hearing this, disagrees silently. He knows the real reason. It's not about her looks, but the fear of approaching the daughter of a mob boss. As time passes, the tension between them softens. Hayes and Nyla are seen playing together and enjoying each other's company. Not long after their time together, Hayes suddenly falls into a deep sleep, leaving Nyla completely shocked. She tries to wake him, but he doesn't respond at all. Earlier, one of the gang members had been seen asking his subordinate, Donnie, if the special energy medicine was ready. He ordered Donnie to mix it into Hayes' drink, believing it would help Hayes feel more energized. However, Donnie accidentally knocked over the drink containing the energy medicine and, without realizing it, picked up a different drink, one laced with a strong sleeping pill. That's the drink Hayes ended up drinking, which explains why he is now sleeping so deeply. When Nyla finds out what happened, she becomes furious. She calls her men, demanding to speak with Donnie. At that moment, Donnie is at a small motel where a woman is working out nearby. His phone rings. It's Nyla, angrily asking for him. Once the gang members understand what happened, they rough Donnie up for his mistake. But Nyla is beyond frustrated. She tells them that she's had enough of their help, blaming them for making things worse rather than better. She then orders them to find a woman who knows how to charm a man properly. One of the thugs claims he knows exactly the person who can help. Soon after, the thugs and the woman they contacted arrive at Nyla's office. Nyla immediately waves the thug away, wanting to speak to the woman alone. The woman listens carefully as Nyla explains her situation. She wants help making Hayes attracted to her. The woman, after hearing everything, calmly tells Nyla that she's already quite pretty and that her real problem is probably being too innocent or naive. The woman then explains that the key to charming a man isn't about trying too hard. She says the trick is to care less about what Hayes wants or expects. Nyla, confused but eager to learn, asks what exactly she should do next. The woman explains to Nyla that when a woman understands how to present herself, she stays in control of the situation. Okay. To help Nyla understand, she hands her a phone with a video showing her how to act more confidently and attractively. Nyla watches the video for a while, trying to absorb the advice. After watching, she admits that both she and Hayes are inexperienced. This is her first real attempt at dating. Hearing this, the woman decides to take charge and tells Nyla they're going shopping. Later, Nyla is seen in a clothing store trying on a stylish outfit. The woman compliments her, saying she looks great. Nyla, still unsure, looks at herself in the mirror and quietly wonders if Hayes would actually like the way she looks. Meanwhile, Hayes is back at his university campus. He glances at his phone, thinking about how Nyla hasn't contacted him all day. He catches himself and tries to brush the thought away, not wanting to overthink it. Soon, he gets a phone call from his friend Dylan, who invites him out for drinks. It turns out to be a group outing at a bar. Hayes arrives and finds himself sitting with Dylan and several girls who chat and laugh among themselves. Watching them, Hayes quietly notices how naturally they interact, thinking to himself that this is probably how girls are usually supposed to act: relaxed, cheerful, and carefree. At the bar, the girls laugh at Dylan's jokes, saying he's really funny. Hayes relaxes a little, thinking that going out for drinks like this isn't so bad after all. As the conversation continues, one of the girls looks at Hayes and asks why he's so quiet. Hayes chuckles softly in response. The girl then says she actually likes quiet men, hinting that she's interested in him. Another guy in the group, trying to make things livelier, suggests they play a game before anyone leaves. He explains the rules. Each block in the game contains a fun question, and if someone can't or won't answer, they have to finish their drink. The first girl picks a block and answers her question easily. Then it's a guy's turn, and he also answers his question without much trouble. When it's Hayes' turn, instead of answering, he silently drinks down his glass of beer. The girls playfully boo him, saying he's no fun. Meanwhile, not far from the group, Nyla's gang members sit quietly at another table, keeping watch. They notice Hayes and his group, their attention shifting toward him and his interactions. Back at the clothing store, the woman helping Nyla asks her to try on another outfit. Nyla hesitates, saying the outfit is too flashy for her taste. The woman comments that Nyla is more conservative than she expected. Inside the fitting room, Nyla grumbles to herself as she changes clothes, wondering why the woman is making her try on so many outfits. Just then, her phone rings. She answers the call and looks shocked at whatever she hears on the other end. Hayes and his group continue having fun, getting caught up in the games and laughter. He is so distracted that he doesn't even notice when Nyla suddenly appears beside him. When he finally looks up and sees her, he is completely shocked, unable to believe she's standing there. At that moment, the girl who showed interest in Hayes steps forward and confronts Nyla, demanding to know who she is. She accuses Nyla of interrupting and says that outsiders aren't welcome. Calmly, Nyla replies that the real outsider is the girl herself. Without hesitation, Nyla declares that she's taking Hayes with her. To everyone's surprise, she even snatches up the tower block game, saying she's confiscating it. Nyla then grabs Hayes and walks away with him. As they leave, Hayes silently wonders how she even found him. He also notices something unusual. Nyla is dressed differently today, and for the first time, her gang members aren't following them. Meanwhile, at a distance, the woman who had earlier been coaching Nyla is seen tailing them. Speaking softly into her walkie-talkie, she comments that Nyla is doing a good job. Later, inside a quiet bar, Nyla sits with Hayes and places the tower block game on the table. She points out that since Hayes played this game with other girls, she'll let it slide if he plays it with her too. Hayes, having no reason to refuse, agrees. They begin to play, but neither of them does well. Both of them end up drinking as penalties since they can't answer most of the questions. Slowly, the drinks affect them. They get drunk and tipsy, laughing and forgetting their worries. Eventually, Nyla passes out from the alcohol. Hayes, now worried, realizes he doesn't know where she lives. Left with no choice, he carries her to a nearby motel and books a room, deciding she can rest there for the night. While at the motel, Hayes can't help but be fascinated by Nyla's outfit as she rests. After a while, she slowly wakes up. Still a bit groggy, she suggests they continue playing, and Hayes agrees. However, as the game goes on, Hayes starts feeling unsure and lost about what to do next. Noticing this, Nyla suddenly shifts her behavior. Remembering the advice from the woman who coached her, she takes control of the situation, acting more confidently and following the moves she learned from the video. Hayes is shocked. He always thought of Nyla as shy and inexperienced, but now she's acting in a way he didn't expect at all. Feeling overwhelmed, he just follows her lead until eventually, both of them grow tired and fall asleep. The next morning, Nyla wakes up first. She groans softly, holding her head and mumbling to herself that she must have blacked out, as she can't remember anything from the previous night. When she turns, she's startled to see Hayes sitting nearby. Feeling pleased with himself, Hayes casually asks if she enjoyed herself last night, assuming she remembers everything. But when Nyla seriously asks what happened, Hayes freezes in shock. His surprise makes him spit out his coffee as he realizes Nyla has no memory of what happened. Nyla calmly repeats that she remembers nothing at all from the previous night. Hayes, now confused and flustered, quickly gets up and dresses. He tells her to get ready and head home too, then leaves the room, still unsure about what actually happened between them. Left alone, Nyla sits in silence, wondering to herself what could have happened while she was blacked out. Nyla sits quietly, staring at her phone. She keeps thinking about how Hayes still hasn't replied to her messages. Her gang members, meanwhile, are sitting nearby, playing cards. One of them calls out to Nyla, telling her to join the game since the stakes are getting higher. Nyla simply tells them to keep the game from turning into a fight. Suddenly, another gang member rushes into the room in a panic, urging Nyla to come to the casino quickly. Nyla, thinking it's just another gambling issue, says she's not interested. But the gang member quickly explains that the Bloodfangs, a rival gang, have shown up and are causing trouble. At the casino, a full gang fight is already underway. Nyla's crew is outnumbered and struggling. They desperately wait for her to arrive. When Nyla finally steps in, she calmly asks what's happening. The leader of the Bloodfangs spots her and, mocking her, comments that it's really true a girl has taken over the gang. He laughs at the idea, but his mocking ends when Nyla suddenly steps forward and knocks him out with a sharp uppercut. Another opponent charges at her, but Nyla takes him down easily too. The rest of the Bloodfangs stop and stare in disbelief. They can't believe Nyla is that strong. Trying to use their numbers against her, they all rush at once, but Nyla moves swiftly and efficiently, knocking them down one after another without hesitation. Just when the fight seems over, someone hidden in the crowd throws a knife. It grazes Nyla's cheek, leaving a thin cut. Her gang members cry out in worry, seeing her bleed, but Nyla tells them not to worry, saying it's just a small scratch. Still, as she touches the cut on her face, a troubling thought crosses her mind. If the scar remains, will Hayes dislike it? Her mind drifts to him, wondering why he seemed upset the last time they met. But before she can think further, another enemy suddenly attacks from behind with a wooden plank, shouting that she shouldn't get distracted during a fight. Meanwhile, Hayes sits at home, grumbling to himself. He tells himself that Nyla is too self-centered and wonders why she thinks he enjoys being treated like a doormat. In his mind, he convinces himself that the only reason he's even seeing her is because of the threats hanging over him. Feeling frustrated, he decides to relax and distract himself by watching a movie series. But just as he settles in, his phone rings. It's Jet. It's Jet. Jet informs him that there was a clash between Nyla's gang and the Bloodfangs at the S Hotel Casino earlier that day. He adds that Nyla got hurt in the fight and is currently in the hospital. Hayes, trying to sound cold, replies that it has nothing to do with him. Jet, sensing something, asks if they fought recently, then tells Hayes that he'll text him the name of the hospital anyway. After the call, Hayes tries to focus on his movie, but his thoughts keep drifting back to Nyla. He repeatedly tells himself that it's none of his business, yet, no matter how much he tries, he can't shake the concern from his mind. Eventually, unable to ignore the worry, Hayes finds himself running through the streets, heading straight to the hospital. When he arrives, he sees Nyla sitting in a hospital ward, a bandage on her head. Her gang members are there with her, watching over her. Breathless, Hayes asks if she was hurt badly. Nyla, surprised to see him, asks how he even knew she was in the hospital, but Hayes doesn't answer. He just stands there, quietly staring at her. Nyla tells him it's nothing serious, explaining that she only needed a few stitches. One of her lackeys, however, proudly adds that Nyla actually beat up the person who injured her. Nyla dismisses them with a wave of her hand and tells them to leave the room, wanting to speak to Hayes alone. Once they're alone, Nyla looks at Hayes seriously and asks why he stopped answering her calls. Hayes lowers his gaze and quietly apologizes. Nyla, confused by his sudden change in attitude, softly asks if she did something wrong. Hayes hesitates for a moment, then tells her that maybe it doesn't mean much to her, but she's actually the first woman he has ever been this close to. Nyla is visibly surprised by his words. She wasn't expecting such a personal admission from him, and for a moment she doesn't know how to respond. After the silence, Nyla's expression softens. She suddenly suggests that they should have a little fun, saying that she wants to enjoy herself while she's still sober. Hayes agrees, and the tense atmosphere between them slowly melts away. They begin talking more casually and sharing a few laughs, lightening the mood in the hospital room. For a while, it feels like everything between them is back to normal. But then, out of nowhere, the sound of footsteps echoes from the hallway. Both of them freeze slightly, and soon a voice calls out from outside the hospital ward. It's the doctor. A few seconds later, the doctor enters the room. He immediately notices Nyla's flushed face and asks if she's feeling feverish. Nyla shakes her head and explains that she was just moving around a little because she was starting to feel restless from lying in bed for too long. The doctor listens patiently, then reminds her that she still needs to avoid any strenuous activities. He checks her chart briefly before telling her that since she doesn't need any further treatment, she can be discharged from the hospital the next day. After giving his instructions, the doctor politely takes his leave, leaving Hayes and Nyla alone once again in the quiet hospital room. At the law department office, Hayes is sitting quietly when a woman suddenly approaches him with a friendly smile. Hayes quickly recognizes her as Tina, someone he clearly hasn't seen in a while. Tina cheerfully comments on how long it's been, then casually invites Hayes to come sit with her, which he does. As they settle down, Hayes, curious, asks why she's there. Tina, in her usual playful tone, teases him by saying that just because she's graduated doesn't mean she's no longer welcome at the university. At that moment, the door opens again and Nyla steps into the office. She had come there specifically to surprise Hayes, wanting to see him now that she's finally been discharged from the hospital. But as she walks in, she freezes upon seeing Hayes sitting with another woman. Hayes, stunned, quickly stands up, asking Nyla why she's there. Nyla, trying to keep her tone casual, says she just wanted to surprise him after being released from the hospital. But her attention shifts toward Tina. Sensing something, Tina curiously asks who Nyla is. Without hesitation, Nyla replies that she's Hayes' girlfriend. Her direct answer catches both Tina and Hayes off guard. Tina, raising an eyebrow, turns to Hayes to confirm if this is true. Hayes, too shocked to say anything, hesitates. Tina, now more curious, says she hasn't seen Nyla around campus before and casually asks if she's a freshman. Nyla, feeling cornered, snaps back, questioning why Tina is asking so many questions and even wonders aloud if Tina is a cop or something. To everyone's surprise, Tina simply smiles and asks how Nyla guessed correctly, hinting that she actually does have ties to law enforcement. Nyla, feeling slightly defensive, but still keeping her tone casual, admits that she happens to be a thug, saying it as if it's nothing unusual. Hayes, standing between the two women, begins to panic as he watches the tension rise. Hayes, feeling overwhelmed by the tension between Tina and Nyla, finally speaks up. He reminds both of them that he's still standing right there and asks them to calm down. Trying to ease the awkward situation, he suggests that they both take a seat first. Reluctantly, the two women sit down, one on either side of him. Once seated, Tina turns to Nyla and asks again if she's really a thug. Hayes, trying to prevent the situation from getting worse, quickly says no. Nyla, not backing down, turns to Hayes and questions if Tina is really a police officer, saying she doesn't look like one. At that moment, Hayes, panicking, suddenly stands up and announces that he needs to get to class, telling them not to fight while he's gone. Without giving them a chance to respond, he quickly leaves the office, escaping the uncomfortable situation and leaving the two women sitting alone. Left together in the office, Tina turns toward Nyla with a calm smile and remarks that Hayes and Nyla must have started dating. She then casually offers to answer any questions Nyla might have, claiming that she knows everything about Hayes. Nyla, suspicious, responds that she doesn't believe that, since Tina is just someone Hayes knows from school. Tina, unfazed, then comments that before she graduated, Hayes used to spend a lot of nights at her place. This statement immediately irritates Nyla, who snaps back at her without thinking. Before their conversation can escalate further, Tina's phone rings. Seeing the caller ID, Tina's expression shifts. She answers the call and immediately walks into the nearby restroom to speak privately. On the call, she explains to her superior that she's not slacking off. She insists she can't afford to relax since she's currently in charge of investigating the local gang situation. She specifically mentions the Nyla gang and the Bloodfangs by name, adding that she's already contacted her source at the prosecutor's office to gather more information. She promises to submit her report soon. Meanwhile, Nyla, who had quietly followed Tina, overhears the entire conversation. Standing just outside the restroom, she listens carefully, and her expression changes as she realizes the truth. Tina really is a police officer. Feeling the danger, Nyla quickly and quietly slips away from the office. As she walks off, she thinks to herself that she needs to avoid Tina as much as possible from now on. Tina is later seen sitting in her parked car, reviewing her notes. She carefully writes down the name of the current boss of the Nyla gang, listed as Nyla Yoon. However, she doesn't realize that the name belongs to the same Nyla she met earlier at the law department office. For now, to her, Nyla Yoon is just another name in her investigation. Elsewhere, back at the law department office, Nyla waits impatiently, glancing at the clock and wondering when Hayes' class will finally be over. She sits restlessly, checking her phone repeatedly, growing more annoyed as time passes. Meanwhile, Jet is seen waiting in his car. His informant sits beside him, going over some files. Soon after, Tina arrives. She approaches Jet with a slightly irritated tone, asking why he called her out to this location. Jet, calm as usual, casually points out that she's actually 20 minutes early. Without further delay, Jet hands over a USB drive containing detailed information about the Nyla gang. Tina, surprised, asks how he managed to gather such sensitive information. Jet, keeping things vague, tells her it's classified. Without pressing further, Tina accepts the USB and heads back to her car, preparing to examine the files later. Meanwhile, back at the university, Nyla is still waiting in the department office, growing increasingly frustrated. She wonders aloud why Hayes is taking so long. Just then, two students walk into the office and are surprised to see her there. Spotting them, Nyla immediately asks if they know where Hayes is. The two guys explain that Hayes was in the first group that left for the retreat earlier that day. Nyla freezes for a moment, shocked. Realization dawns on her. Hayes has left for a retreat without even telling her. Anger quickly replaces her confusion. Without wasting time, she demands that the students tell her the location of the retreat. Once she has the details, Nyla pulls out her phone and calls her gang members. She instructs them to gather everyone, saying she's planning a team-building session. She tells them she'll send the address shortly. With determination in her eyes, she plans to track Hayes down herself. Mr. Yoon, Nyla's father, is seen enjoying himself in a private room with a lady. They are laughing and drinking together when the woman's phone suddenly rings. Mr. Yoon, clearly not pleased, tries to stop her from answering, but the woman calmly explains that she needs to take the call. After a moment of hesitation, he allows her. The woman steps aside and answers the call. She speaks quietly, her tone serious. From her side of the conversation, it becomes clear that the caller is offering her another job, a deal that she negotiates while Mr. Yoon waits nearby, unaware. After some discussion, she tells the caller to send her a picture of the next target. Once the conversation ends, she hangs up and returns to Mr. Yoon, acting like nothing is wrong. Mr. Yoon, curious, asks what the call was about. The woman smiles calmly and pretends she's going to show him what it was. But suddenly, she pulls out a hidden knife and, without warning, attacks Mr. Yoon. He has no time to react. She kills him instantly, leaving no chance for him to defend himself. After confirming his death, the woman calmly opens her phone and crosses Mr. Yoon's name off a digital list of targets. Moments later, she receives another message, a new assignment, along with a photo of the next person she's meant to eliminate. She stares at the photo carefully and, unlike before, her expression turns serious. She realizes that this next target won't be as easy to handle as Mr. Yoon. Meanwhile, Hayes is at the retreat, sitting with his friends as they drink together. Though they laugh and try to keep the mood lively, Hayes is visibly worn out. His friends notice how tired he looks. Hayes himself feels drained and frustrated, silently thinking that the retreat is starting to exhaust him. He looks around, wondering where everyone else disappeared to, realizing that he's mostly stuck with his small group of friends. Eventually, Hayes stands up and tells them he's heading to the bathroom. As he walks away from the table, he silently reflects on how much he has changed. He remembers how, back when he was a freshman, he could drink endlessly without feeling worn out. Now, things feel different, and he can't figure out why. Hayes makes his way toward the bathroom, feeling drained and just wanting a moment to clear his head. As he reaches for the door, he suddenly hears noises coming from inside. At first, he freezes in confusion, but it doesn't take long before he realizes what's happening. From the sounds, it's clear that a guy and a girl are inside, having a spicy moment. Hayes stands there awkwardly for a moment, confused and frustrated, wondering why anyone would choose a bathroom, especially during a retreat, to fool around. He starts to think maybe that's why the rest of the retreat participants had disappeared. Everyone must have paired off to spend time with their partners in private. Sighing in disappointment, Hayes realizes he has no choice but to leave. He decides to find somewhere outside to relieve himself instead, since intruding on someone else's privacy isn't an option. But just when he steps outside, another shock greets him. He comes across yet another couple, hidden away in a quiet spot, clearly enjoying their own private moment together. At this point, Hayes feels overwhelmed. He silently wonders what's wrong with everyone at this retreat. He can't understand why suddenly everyone around him seems obsessed with pairing up and sneaking away to be alone. As he stares at the couple, for some reason, his thoughts drift to Nyla. He doesn't understand why she suddenly comes to mind, but he finds himself thinking about her without realizing it. He tries to shake the thought away. Just then, a loud noise grabs his attention from the roadside. He glances in that direction and sees a group of thugs jeering and taunting the couples, clearly there to stir trouble. Seeing this makes Hayes angry. He feels disgusted by the thugs harassing people who are just trying to enjoy their retreat. Fueled by frustration, he immediately decides to march over and confront them. But as he gets closer, something makes him hesitate. He takes a good look at the thugs' faces, and then it hits him. He recognizes them. They're members of Nyla's gang. This realization makes him stop in his tracks. He stands still for a moment, unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, the couples are growing frightened. The girls are backing away nervously, and even the guys are unsure how to handle the situation. No one recognizes the gang members, and their threatening presence is intimidating everyone. At that moment, Hayes takes a deep breath and forces himself to step forward. He pushes aside his hesitation and walks directly into the middle of the thugs, pretending he doesn't recognize them. As soon as one of the gang members spots him, their expression changes to surprise. None of them expected to see Hayes in a place like this. The students watching from behind begin whispering among themselves. A few ask Hayes if he knows these men. Trying to protect himself and avoid drawing attention, Hayes quickly lies, saying he doesn't know them at all. However, one of the thugs doesn't let that slide. He steps forward, confronting Hayes directly and asking why he's pretending not to know them. Hayes, caught off guard, struggles for a response. But before the thug can press him further, Hayes shoots him a sharp, intense glare. His expression shifts to something cold and serious, a look strong enough to make the thug hesitate. Seeing the change in Hayes' demeanor, the thug freezes. For a moment, he feels genuinely intimidated. Though none of them say it out loud, the gang members silently acknowledge that Hayes is no ordinary outsider. After all, he's the one their boss, Nyla, has chosen. After intimidating the thugs without realizing how he did it, Hayes calmly walks away from them, but his thoughts are restless. He starts thinking seriously. If those thugs are here, then it probably means Nyla isn't far away either. He hasn't even finished that thought when he suddenly hears someone calling his name from behind. Turning quickly, he's both surprised and uneasy to see Nyla standing there. Nyla, acting casual, asks Hayes if they can hang out together. But instead of answering her immediately, Hayes, still caught off guard, questions why she's even there in the first place. Without hesitation, Nyla tells him that she came because she was worried about him. This answer confuses Hayes. He doesn't understand why she would be worried about him being at a retreat. Trying to get clarification, Hayes asks her directly what exactly she's so worried about. Nyla, without much thought, tells him that it's the whole couple's fun she's been hearing about that got her concerned. She admits she's heard rumors that retreats are places where couples sneak off to have private moments, and that's why she decided to check on him herself. Hayes, hearing this, doesn't know whether to feel embarrassed, annoyed, or surprised. Meanwhile, at the retreat grounds, most of the students and their partners are still gathered outside. Their fun had been disrupted earlier by the appearance of the thugs, but now another scene unfolds. A police van suddenly arrives, pulling up not far from where the students are standing. Several police officers step out, along with Tina, who walks behind them with her usual serious expression. One of the officers, more laid back, grabs a carton of soju from the van. Seeing the students around, he guesses they must have come here for a retreat and casually suggests they could use the drinks to enjoy themselves too. As he makes the suggestion, he glances over at Tina, joking that she looks like someone who'd enjoy a bit of fun too. Tina, not amused, cuts him off with a cold response. She firmly tells him that she's someone who keeps work and play strictly separate. As Tina follows her fellow officers toward the retreat grounds, her eyes suddenly lock onto someone in the crowd. At that moment, she freezes. Now that she has thoroughly reviewed the files from the USB Jet gave her, she instantly recognizes the face before her, Nyla Yoon, the current generation boss of the Nyla gang. Her expression tightens as she realizes who she's looking at. The puzzle pieces fall into place in her mind. The same Nyla she met earlier in the university's law department office is actually the leader of one of the city's most notorious underground groups. At the same time, Nyla, seeing Tina among the police officers, narrows her eyes. She had once asked her father to look into Tina using his network of police informants. Through them, she had learned that Tina recently became the new team leader of the Organized Crime Division, a person who would naturally become a serious threat to her gang. Knowing Tina's identity and position, Nyla calmly steps forward to confront her. As they face each other, Nyla speaks first, her voice casual but carrying an edge. She questions what Tina is doing at a place like this, remarking that she assumed police officers should be too busy for such trips. She says it like a joke, but her tone holds a challenge. Tina, unbothered, responds smoothly. She tells Nyla that even cops are allowed to take breaks, adding that she's here with her unit for what she calls a team-building session. But she doesn't let Nyla relax. She coldly explains that they also received intel that the Nyla gang had shown up at this very location, which made it her business to investigate. Turning the question back on Nyla, Tina asks why known thugs like her and her people are lurking around a college retreat site. Nyla doesn't flinch. Refusing to acknowledge her gang's criminal identity, she coolly responds that they only run legal businesses. Her words are smooth but empty, clearly meant to deflect. Tina's expression sharpens. She doesn't buy the act. She challenges Nyla directly, accusing her of trying to paint her gang as law-abiding citizens when the files say otherwise. Without missing a beat, Tina then hits where she knows it will hurt. She brings up Hayes. Tina coldly suggests that perhaps Nyla's real reason for getting close to Hayes is to use him as her future gang's legal counsel, hiding behind his clean background to cover their crimes. That accusation hits Nyla hard. Her expression darkens. Her voice rises as she snaps back, shouting that Tina should stop dragging Hayes into this. Her frustration and anger boil over as she warns Tina not to provoke her by using Hayes' name in her arguments. Tina, remaining composed but firm, questions Nyla's reaction. She asks if Nyla really thinks she can taunt a police officer so openly, knowing full well who she is. But Nyla, now fully worked up, declares boldly that she doesn't care if Tina is a cop. She tells Tina outright that if she wants a fight, she's more than ready to give her one. Just as Nyla and Tina are about to start fighting, Hayes spots them from across the retreat grounds. His eyes widen in panic, and without thinking, he rushes over as fast as he can. He steps between them, holding out his hands to stop either from making the first move. With a desperate tone, Hayes pleads with both of them to calm down. He reminds them that they're all at the retreat for relaxation, not to fight. He begs them to forget whatever they were arguing about and just enjoy themselves like everyone else. Hearing Hayes' voice brings both women back to their senses. They glance around and realize that, strangely enough, their people, the police officers and Nyla's gang members, are already mingling and even drinking together like old friends. The tension between their groups had somehow faded while the two leaders were confronting each other. Tina, however, doesn't share the casual mood. When she notices how comfortably the police officers are getting along with the gang members, her frustration grows. She clenches her fists in irritation. She knows her team is supposed to be monitoring the Nyla gang, not drinking with them. But her frustration is ignored. One of the police officers, relaxed and tipsy, remembers something else entirely. He suddenly recalls that they hadn't yet celebrated Tina's promotion to team leader. Trying to lighten the mood, he calls Tina over and urges her to drink with them in celebration of her new rank. Caught off guard, Tina tries to refuse, but the attention from everyone leaves her no choice. Reluctantly, she sits down with them and accepts a glass of soju. She sips it, but the drink's strength shocks her. Before she can stop herself, she spits it back out, coughing as the burn hits her throat. Embarrassed and angry, she can only glare at the officer who poured the drink. Hayes watches all of this unfold and quietly sighs to himself. From where he's sitting, it's obvious that what was meant to be a peaceful retreat has turned into complete chaos. But Nyla, sensing his mood, tries to cheer him up. She smiles and pours him a drink, encouraging him to relax. Hayes hesitates but accepts it, trying not to dwell on the mess around him. As everyone continues drinking, Tina finally has enough. She stands abruptly, frustrated, and starts walking away. Hayes notices her leaving and calls after her, asking where she's going. Without looking back, Tina simply tells him she's heading to the bathroom. But before she disappears, she turns briefly and warns Nyla not to get Hayes too drunk, accusing her of possibly trying to take advantage of him if she does. Her voice is sharp and serious, making Nyla narrow her eyes slightly in response. Soon, the students themselves can't handle the amount of alcohol they've consumed. One after another, they start passing out where they sit. Hayes, still awake, watches the scene and shakes his head, thinking that the retreat has completely spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, among the few people still awake, one police officer glances across at one of Nyla's gang members sitting near him. In the dim light, he finally gets a good look at the man's face, and recognition flashes in his eyes. He stares for a moment before speaking up, saying that he's sure he remembers putting that guy behind bars once. The gang member doesn't deny it. He casually confirms that the officer is right, explaining that he was released due to insufficient evidence. The police officer winces at the gang member's confession and silently blames the prosecutors for letting dangerous people walk free. He feels they are all incompetent, failing to hold criminals accountable. The gang member smirks and reminds the officer that he was once accused of taking bribes. The officer's face tightens in irritation, but he quietly explains that those charges were dropped when it became clear the amount involved was too small to merit prosecution. Unbeknownst to them, Hayes stands just out of sight, listening in on their conversation. He cannot believe the things he hears. A respected officer admitting to bribery accusations and a gang member boasting about escaping justice. His heart pounds as he realizes how blurred the line is between law enforcement and organized crime. Meanwhile, Nyla, unsteady on her feet from too many drinks, leans heavily on Hayes' shoulder to get his attention. Without a word, she indicates that she needs fresh air. Concerned but compliant, Hayes helps her to her feet and follows her outside. Once they step into the cool night air, Nyla urges him to walk with her deeper into the grounds, suggesting they continue their fun away from prying eyes. At first, Hayes hesitates. He remembers Tina's warning, but Nyla reminds him without speaking that this is exactly what Tina told her not to do. Feeling cornered by her determined expression, Hayes reluctantly agrees, and they move off into a quiet corner of the retreat. At the same time, Tina finds herself stuck in the clogged restroom and decides to seek relief in the next building. Making her way through dimly lit corridors, she turns a corner and freezes as she saw Hayes and Nyla together. Tina can't help but misunderstand the situation, as, from what she saw, it looked serious. Meanwhile, back at the retreat hall, one of Nyla's gang members receives a phone call informing him that Nyla's father had been attacked and is now in the hospital, though he survived the incident. The gang member quickly passes the information to the others, who are shocked and confused about who could have harmed their former boss. Without hesitation, they all stand up and prepare to leave immediately. A concerned police officer tries to stop them, expecting them to report the incident properly to the authorities. However, it's clear that the gang members intend to handle the matter themselves. One of them warns the officer to stay out of their business, but the officer refuses, insisting that this should be handled by the law. At that moment, one gang member remembers that they should inform their current leader, Nyla, about her father's situation. But they realize none of them know where she is, as she had left without her phone. Fearing that something might have happened to her as well, they begin running through the area, calling out her name as they search for her urgently. As they reach the retreat's main entrance, Tina hears their shouting and steps outside to ask what is wrong. They explain that they're looking for Nyla. After thinking for a moment, Tina decides to point them in the direction where she last saw Nyla. The gang members rush toward the spot, hoping to find their boss quickly. But when they arrive, the place is empty. Meanwhile, Nyla and Hayes are hiding inside the men's room to avoid being found. Hayes is nervous and suggests that they should leave before someone discovers them, but Nyla insists on staying with him a little longer. Left with no real choice, Hayes agrees, though he remains worried about getting caught. While Nyla and Hayes are still hidden, Nyla suddenly hears her name being called. Realizing that her gang members have entered the area, she knows she can't keep hiding. Reluctantly, she steps out to face them. As soon as they see her, they rush over, relieved but cautious when they notice she looks frustrated. Before they can explain, they ask why she seems angry. Nyla, unwilling to explain her situation with Hayes, vents her frustration on them instead. Without waiting for their answer, she strikes one of them out of irritation, leaving them more confused but too nervous to complain. Meanwhile, Hayes remains hidden in the men's restroom, unsure when it will be safe to step out. He stays quietly inside, hoping no one will find him there. After some tense silence, Nyla's gang members finally manage to explain the situation to her. The moment she hears that her father has been attacked and hospitalized, her expression changes from frustration to concern. She demands to know exactly which hospital he was taken to, and they inform her that it's the same hospital she often visits. Wasting no time, Nyla orders everyone to head there immediately. Without another word, the group moves quickly toward their cars and speeds off toward the hospital. Meanwhile, Tina and one of the police officers quietly watch them from a distance. The officer, growing uneasy, asks Tina what they should do next, worrying that the gang might cause more trouble once they reach the hospital. Tina thinks carefully for a moment, then decides not to intervene directly. She reminds the officer that they are officially on a break and not on duty at the moment, using it as a reason to avoid getting involved. With that decision made, Tina separates from the officer, her thoughts elsewhere. As she walks alone, Tina starts analyzing the situation more carefully. It bothers her that no one mentioned anything about who attacked Nyla's father. She realizes that identifying the attacker should be her priority now, rather than chasing Nyla's gang. While lost in thought, Tina suddenly bumps into Hayes, who is just stepping out of the restroom. Hayes sees her and instinctively tries to greet her. However, as soon as Tina meets his eyes, she remembers what she had witnessed earlier with him and Nyla. Embarrassed and flustered, she avoids his gaze entirely, rushing past him without saying a word. Hayes stands there confused, unable to understand why she ignored him so abruptly. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Nyla's father is far from the helpless patient his daughter imagines him to be. He looks completely fine and relaxed, sitting up in bed with a cheerful expression. A woman sits beside him, chatting comfortably, clearly keeping him company. He seems far more interested in enjoying her presence than in worrying about his supposed injuries. At that same time, Nyla and her gang members are speeding through the streets, filled with anxiety and concern as they rush to check on him. When Nyla and her gang arrive at the hospital, they are shocked and disappointed to find her father sitting comfortably, looking perfectly fine. Nyla, in particular, feels frustrated, though she keeps her emotions in check. Approaching her father's bed, she confronts him, pointing out that he clearly doesn't look injured. Her father calmly explains that, while he may look fine, he is actually wearing a cast under his clothing. He goes on to describe how the attack happened, claiming he was ambushed in his office and, in the chaos, had to jump out of a second-story window. That's when he twisted his ankle. According to the doctors, he'll need at least 2 weeks to fully recover. Nyla listens, still irritated. What bothers her most is not just his relaxed state, but the fact that someone dared to target him at all. Fueled by anger, she immediately gives her gang members strict orders. Find out exactly who was behind the attack. She tells them to report back as soon as they have answers. For now, she says she'll remain at the hospital to personally watch over her father. Without saying more, she turns to the woman sitting beside her father and coldly tells her to leave, making it clear that her presence is no longer welcome. Meanwhile, the woman who had attacked Nyla's father, known only as Butterfly, is seen elsewhere, sitting with a man in a quiet location. She receives a phone call informing her that Nyla's father survived the attack and is currently in the hospital. She doesn't seem surprised at all. Calmly, she explains to the caller that she never intended to kill him in the first place. She says she was only testing the situation, deliberately giving him the chance to escape. It was during his escape that he injured himself, leading to his current hospitalization. The person on the other end of the call becomes angry, accusing Butterfly of failing to carry out the mission, especially after being paid for it. The caller demands answers, frustrated by her careless attitude. But Butterfly, unimpressed by the scolding, simply hangs up without saying another word, choosing instead to return to whatever task she was focusing on before the call came through. Hayes, meanwhile, ends up spending the night at the retreat, sleeping without even realizing how exhausted he had become. When morning comes, he slowly opens his eyes, feeling unusually heavy and uncomfortable in his chest. Confused, he blinks several times as he tries to figure out why his breathing feels restricted. As he shifts slightly, he glances downward, and that's when he freezes. To his absolute shock, he discovers that Tina is fast asleep, using his chest as a pillow. She looks peaceful, completely unaware of what she's doing, while Hayes stares in disbelief, unable to process what's happening. Hayes tries to think back to the previous night, trying to piece together how such a situation could have occurred. His memory slowly returns. After a round of heavy drinking, he remembers chatting and drinking with Tina until they both must have dozed off without realizing. He figures it must be Tina's bad sleeping habits that caused her to end up in such an awkward position. Still, Hayes knows that if anyone were to walk in and see them like that, they'd get entirely the wrong idea. Growing increasingly anxious, Hayes carefully tries to lift Tina off his chest. But to his dismay, she's surprisingly heavy and firmly settled on him, making it impossible to move her without waking her up. At that same time, outside the retreat building, one of Nyla's gang members is on guard duty. This was not his idea. The previous night, Nyla had ordered him to return to the retreat site specifically to keep an eye on Hayes, just in case. She had told him that whoever attacked her father might also target people close to her, and although Hayes wasn't part of their gang, she considered him someone important enough to protect. The gang member found Nyla's concern puzzling. To him, she was overthinking the situation, but as she was the boss, he had no choice but to follow her orders. He spent the night guarding the area around Hayes, silently grumbling about Nyla's strange priorities. Now that morning has arrived, the gang member decides to check inside the building to confirm that Hayes is safe. As he quietly enters the sleeping area, he's expecting to find Hayes peacefully asleep, possibly snoring from the after effects of last night's drinks. But instead, he is met with a scene that makes his blood boil. There, right in front of him, he sees Hayes lying down helplessly with Tina comfortably on top of him as if he's her personal bed. The gang member's eyes widen in pure disbelief. His initial shock quickly turns into fury as he glares at the scene, completely misreading it. He doesn't care whether Hayes was trying to push Tina off or not. To him, it looks like a betrayal of Nyla's trust. Fueled by frustration and confusion, he can't contain his emotions any longer. In a sudden outburst, he lets out a loud, angry yell that echoes through the retreat building, startling everyone awake. As the thug suddenly shouts Hayes' name across the retreat grounds, Hayes immediately turns toward the voice, startled and confused. His heart sinks when he recognizes the thug charging straight toward him, drawing the attention of nearby students. Tina, who has just leaned away from Hayes, also turns, her expression tightening in surprise. She doesn't understand why a gangster would appear here, at a university retreat of all places. The thug wastes no time confronting Hayes. Without lowering his voice, he demands to know why Hayes is cheating on their boss, Nyla. His accusatory tone is sharp enough that others nearby start glancing in their direction, curious. Hayes, caught completely off guard, freezes. He can't even form a response as confusion floods his mind. He doesn't know how to explain himself or even process what's happening. Back at the hospital, Mr. Yoon lies in bed insisting that he's nearing death. He tells Nyla to call his lawyer immediately, claiming his time is short. Nyla, frustrated yet used to her father's dramatics, tells him bluntly that a sprained ankle isn't a death sentence. Still, she holds back from arguing too much. Deep down, she knows her father enjoys the attention. Despite her annoyance, Nyla stays by his side, firmly deciding that she won't leave him alone, convinced that whoever attacked him might try again. She resolves to protect him personally until he can stand on his own. Outside the ward, Butterfly, the woman who previously attempted to kill Mr. Yoon, stands in the shadows, calmly monitoring the situation. She holds a small camera in her hand, using it to peek inside the hospital room. The moment she sees Nyla beside her father, Butterfly knows things are going to be difficult. Rumors about Nyla's strength are clearly not exaggerated, and facing her directly will be risky. But Butterfly doesn't back down. Instead, she sees this as an opportunity to test Nyla herself. She pulls out her phone and calls a hidden associate, calmly assigning them a task. Her expression shows amusement, not concern. That night, Nyla, tired of sitting in the hospital ward, steps outside for fresh air. She tells herself that a short walk won't hurt. Her father is safe enough for now. The night air feels cold, but the quietness comforts her, even though she feels the weight of loneliness pressing against her. She walks aimlessly, letting her mind wander. Suddenly, a man approaches from the shadows and casually asks her for a lighter. Nyla answers sharply that she doesn't smoke and starts to move past him. But in that instant, another man silently grabs her from behind. Caught off guard, she struggles, but her captors are prepared. Together, they drag her quickly into a hidden building nearby. Within moments, Nyla finds herself trapped in a secluded corner of the building. The men don't expect Nyla to be so easy to capture since they think she will resist more. One of them asks what they should do with her, and the other says, Butterfly told them to do whatever they want. The first man decides to mess with her, but just as he tries to start, Nyla kicks him. She shows them that she let them catch her on purpose, but now she fights back. When the second man tries to stab her, she knocks him to the ground instead. A third man joins the fight, but after a short struggle, she beats him too, leaving him bleeding from the nose. Meanwhile, Butterfly stands upstairs in a nearby building and watches as Nyla defeats all three of her men. She realizes she can't get to Mr. Yoon while Nyla is protecting him, so she simply watches Nyla walk away. Afterwards, Butterfly comes down and her men apologize for failing. She tells them not to worry, saying they did well enough since her real goal was to test Nyla's skills, which she now understands better. She then tells them to investigate who is close to Nyla, thinking that everyone has a weakness, and maybe she can reach Nyla through someone important to her. But looking at their injured state, she doubts they can handle the job. The next day, Nyla keeps complaining about how she can't sleep comfortably in the hospital. She feels tired and restless, so she decides to leave the hospital ward and take a short walk outside. As she walks, her mind returns to the strange men who attacked her the night before. She wonders who they are, feeling frustrated that she wasted her energy fighting people she knows nothing about. Her thoughts shift to Hayes, and she quietly wishes he could understand what she is going through in the hospital. While she is still thinking about him, Hayes suddenly appears from behind. Seeing him makes her very happy. Hayes tells her he is worried about her, and that is why he skips school that day to come and check on her. Nyla, surprised, asks how he knows she is in the hospital. Hayes explains that the thug, Donnie, is the one who told him. As soon as she hears this, Nyla grabs Hayes and quickly pulls him with her toward a quiet corner of the hospital. While they are hurrying to the corner, they don't realize that Butterfly is also inside the hospital at that moment. Butterfly silently watches them and takes a photo of Hayes as he runs after Nyla. Nyla just wants to spend some time playing with Hayes, feeling happy that he came all the way to the hospital for her. Watching this from a distance, Butterfly finally confirms to herself that Nyla really has someone special in her life. While Hayes and Nyla are still in the middle of their playful moment, Hayes suddenly gets a phone call. Nyla, not wanting their time together to be interrupted, tells him not to answer it. But Hayes checks the caller ID first. When he sees that it's Prosecutor Jet, he tells Nyla that he has to take the call, even though she clearly isn't happy about it. He answers anyway. As Hayes answers the call, Jet immediately asks him if he is alone. Hayes replies that he is not, so he lowers his voice to avoid being overheard. Jet reminds him of the mission, warning him not to lose focus when it comes to Nyla. Jet explains again why he chose Hayes for this job, saying it's because he trusts him as one of his best informants. That's why Jet pushed him into getting close to Nyla, believing that if Hayes dates the leader of the Nyla gang, he'll naturally gain access to secret information, since people in relationships often share things without thinking. Jet then asks Hayes if he has managed to collect any useful information from Nyla yet. Hayes quietly tells him that he hasn't. Hearing this, Jet becomes frustrated. He warns Hayes not to stay passive any longer. Instead, he orders him to get serious, to draw Nyla in emotionally and make her fall for him completely. Jet believes that once Nyla is truly hooked, she won't be able to stop herself from sharing valuable secrets. Hayes tries to explain something to Jet, maybe to justify himself or reveal what he is really feeling, but Jet cuts him off, not interested in hearing excuses. He simply tells Hayes to follow the plan and do as instructed. When Jet notices that Hayes suddenly stops responding, silence filling the call, it hits him. Perhaps it's not Nyla who is falling for Hayes, but Hayes who is falling for Nyla. He realizes that the situation might be slipping out of control. Hayes tries to apologize, but Jet tells him not to bother. He wants to tell Hayes to put in more effort, but before he can finish his sentence, the call cuts off unexpectedly. Staring at his phone, Jet wonders what could have gone wrong. Meanwhile, Hayes and Nyla finish their playful moment and finally stand up together. Unbeknownst to them, Butterfly has been hiding nearby, watching them closely since they started playing. Seeing that they're done now, Butterfly knows she can't hide any longer. She stands up too, though reluctantly, and immediately makes a phone call to the same person she sent Hayes' photo to earlier. Calmly but urgently, she instructs the person on the other end of the call to capture Hayes as quickly as possible. As Hayes walks slowly toward home, his thoughts keep circling in his mind. He feels completely torn. On one side, he knows he's hiding something important from Nyla, and the guilt of that weighs heavily on him. He can't shake the thought that he is betraying someone who trusts him. But on the other side, he remembers the pressure from Prosecutor Jet. Jet's orders are clear. He must stay close to Nyla and gather information from her. Hayes knows that disobeying Jet could ruin everything he has worked for. The conflict inside him grows stronger with every step, leaving him stuck in the middle, unable to choose between the two paths. He feels trapped, unsure of what the right decision is. As he keeps walking, lost in his thoughts, he reaches a quiet and lonely street. Suddenly, he notices three rough-looking men standing ahead. One of them casually steps forward and asks Hayes if he has a lighter. Without thinking much about it, Hayes tells them that he doesn't smoke. He tries to walk past them, but before he can react, one of the thugs sneaks up from behind and grabs him tightly. Hayes struggles, but they overpower him easily. Without giving him any chance to escape, they start dragging him forcefully toward an alley, planning to take him to their usual hidden spot, where they deal with troublemakers. As they drag him along, one of the thugs glances at Hayes and jokes with his friend, asking if this guy looks as strong as the girl they fought recently. The other thug laughs, shaking his head, saying Hayes is just too weak and clueless to compare to that woman. The moment Hayes hears them mention a woman, he feels a chill. His mind immediately goes to Nyla. He wonders if they're talking about her. His body tenses at the thought that Nyla might have crossed paths with these dangerous men before. The thugs, thinking they have Hayes under control, decide to call their leader Butterfly to report that they've captured him. They pull out a phone, preparing to make the call. But just as they're about to dial, a strong voice rings out from ahead, commanding them to let Hayes go immediately. The thugs freeze in place and lift their heads to see who spoke. Standing firmly in front of them is Donnie, a member of their own gang. His face is serious, and he doesn't look pleased. The thugs hesitate, confused and unsure why Donnie, one of their own, is telling them to release Hayes, but the authority in his voice makes them pause. Hayes, still held tightly, looks at Donnie with surprise, realizing that Donnie has just stepped in to save him. The thugs refuse to answer Donnie directly. Instead, they tell him to mind his own business and stay out of what doesn't concern him. But Donnie doesn't step back. He calmly lets them know that Hayes is, in fact, his business. With a serious tone, he warns them once again to let Hayes go. Even then, the thugs refuse to listen. They make it clear that Hayes is important to them and that they can't just hand him over. Hayes himself stands frozen, shocked to see Donnie appear like this, and even more surprised that Donnie is standing up for him. As Donnie steps closer, one of the thugs suddenly realizes something. He recognizes Donnie's face and remembers that Donnie is part of Nyla's gang. This makes him pause for a moment, surprised that Hayes seems connected to someone from Nyla's side. But Donnie quickly clears up the confusion. He tells the thugs that he doesn't even like Hayes personally. He's not protecting him out of friendship. Instead, he explains that if anything happens to Hayes while he's around, he will be the one blamed, and that could cost him his life. For that reason, he cannot just stand there and let them take Hayes. However, the thugs aren't convinced and refuse to back down. When Donnie sees they're not letting Hayes go, he has no choice but to start fighting them. In the middle of the scuffle, he yells at Hayes to escape while he's keeping the thugs busy. But instead of running, Hayes, out of panic or stubbornness, decides to fight too. He charges at one of the thugs and tries to help, but he's not strong enough and quickly gets knocked to the ground. Donnie keeps fighting as hard as he can, doing everything possible to protect Hayes, but the thugs manage to overpower him. Before he knows it, they succeed in grabbing Hayes and dragging him away right in front of Donnie's eyes. As they leave, the thugs intentionally speak loud enough for Donnie to hear where they're planning to take Hayes, hinting at their destination before disappearing with him. Later, when the thugs arrive at Butterfly's hideout with Hayes, they report everything. Butterfly asks them to confirm whether they deliberately revealed their location, and they nod, saying they did it on purpose. Butterfly notices bruises on their faces and asks if Hayes is the one who fought back, but they explain that someone else interfered, a guy from Nyla's gang. Hearing this surprises Butterfly, but also impresses her. She smiles slightly and tells the thugs that they will receive a special reward for completing the task despite the trouble. Satisfied, Butterfly orders them to go stand guard outside. The men know what this means. Butterfly has no intention of questioning Hayes right away. After the thugs leave the room, Butterfly walks slowly toward Hayes. She stands in front of him and speaks calmly. She tells him that while he's being held captive, she doesn't plan to rough him up or hurt him physically. She explains that she usually doesn't like ordinary people like him into situations like this. However, since she now knows that Hayes is connected to Nyla, thinking of him as Nyla's boyfriend, she tells him plainly that he'll have to stay with her until she finishes dealing with Nyla. Hearing this, Hayes gathers the courage to ask her why she's after Nyla. Butterfly replies in her usual casual tone, saying that it's simply part of her job. At the same time, she admits that Nyla caught her interest, which made the situation more personal. She then shifts her gaze back to Hayes, smiling slightly, and says that now she's also interested in him. She claims she wants to learn more about who he really is. Without caring about Hayes' feelings, Butterfly begins to toy with him. She treats it like a game, deciding to pass time with him while they wait for Nyla to show up. She's fully aware that Donnie would have informed Nyla about where they are by now. Even though Hayes clearly doesn't want any part of it, Butterfly doesn't care about his consent. His hands are tied, and there's nothing he can do to resist whatever she's doing to him. He's helpless. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Donnie arrives in a hurry. He finds Nyla and tries to explain what happened. But before he can finish speaking, Nyla, furious, lashes out and kicks Donnie hard, slamming him against the door. Her anger boils over, blaming him for letting the thugs get away with Hayes. Donnie tries to defend himself, explaining that the number of attackers was too much for him to handle alone. After a moment, Nyla's anger cools slightly. She thinks about the situation more clearly and admits to herself that the blame might actually be hers. She realizes she made a mistake by not assigning more people to protect Hayes. In the end, she knows it was careless to leave him guarded by only one person. After calming down, Nyla asks Donnie if he knows where they took Hayes. Donnie explains that the thugs deliberately let him hear the location as they were leaving. Nyla immediately understands the trick. They want to lure her there. Even so, she knows she can't ignore it. But with her father still in the hospital, she can't risk leaving him alone. She quickly decides to leave Donnie behind to protect her father while she handles the situation herself. Donnie tries to insist on going with her, not wanting to let her face danger alone. But Nyla refuses. She tells him firmly to stay. In her mind, she feels Donnie will only slow her down or get hurt again, just like before. Without wasting any more time, she leaves the hospital and heads straight for the location alone. It doesn't take long before Nyla arrives at the old, unfinished building where Hayes is being held. Without hesitation, she confronts the three thugs standing guard outside. In just a few minutes, she knocks all three of them out with swift, precise moves. She doesn't waste energy and doesn't slow down. Once the path is clear, Nyla enters the building, moving quickly through the dark, half-built rooms. But when she finally reaches the inner room, she freezes for a moment in shock. What she sees in front of her catches her completely off guard. Hayes is tied up, helpless, while Butterfly sits close beside him, treating the entire situation like some casual game. As soon as Nyla steps into the room, Hayes calls out her name, his voice filled with desperation. Hearing him pushes her to move faster toward him. But just then, the thugs she had beaten outside earlier manage to recover. They come rushing back into the building, now determined not to lose to her again. They shout at her to stop where she is and warn her to step back. But Nyla ignores them completely. Her focus stays on Hayes and Butterfly as she keeps walking toward them without hesitation. Butterfly, still sitting calmly beside Hayes, watches Nyla approach and remarks that she didn't expect her to arrive so quickly. But Nyla doesn't care about Butterfly's surprise. She's too angry. Instead of answering, she demands to know who Butterfly really is. Butterfly doesn't respond. Her silence only fuels Nyla's frustration. Fueled by anger, Nyla tries to rush at Butterfly directly. But before she can reach her, one of the thugs attacks from behind, kicking her hard and knocking her to the ground. Lying on the floor, Nyla hears the thug mocking her, telling her not to underestimate them. He warns her that this fight won't be like the last one, where she defeated all of them easily. As Nyla struggles to push herself back up, the thug grabs her roughly and starts strangling her from behind. Even though she tells him to let go, he tightens his grip instead. Struggling for air, Nyla finally lands a hard punch, breaking free and sending the thug flying across the room. Before she can catch her breath, another thug charges at her. Nyla lifts her fist to strike him, but before she can land the punch, she feels herself shoved forcefully from the side. Shocked, she realizes it's Butterfly who pushed her. She never expected Butterfly to step into the fight directly, much less be strong enough to push her off balance. Before Nyla can react, everything becomes a blur. She tries to fight back, but her arms are suddenly pinned. Caught off guard, she struggles but can't break free. She gets struck hard and loses consciousness. When Nyla wakes up sometime later, she finds herself sitting against a wall. Her hands are tied tightly. As she opens her eyes properly, she sees a painful sight. Hayes and Butterfly are sitting right in front of her. They're relaxed, and it looks like Butterfly is casually playing around with Hayes again. The sight fills her with anger and fear at the same time. Struggling to sit up, Nyla immediately shouts at Butterfly, demanding that she move away from Hayes. She also orders her to release Hayes and let him go. But Butterfly, calm and unbothered, replies softly that she's not the one holding Hayes back. She explains that Hayes himself refuses to eat or do anything unless Nyla is present. Butterfly calmly tells Hayes that Nyla was never really her target from the beginning. She explains that she's only keeping Nyla trapped for a while, treating her more like bait than a threat. Hearing this breaks Nyla inside. She feels humiliated, seeing Hayes still sitting there beside Butterfly, even after everything. The pain in her heart grows when she realizes that instead of fighting to get away, Hayes remains there, almost as if he's waiting. Struggling against the ropes, Nyla looks at Hayes and demands to know why he's still there. But Hayes tells her softly that he can't just leave her behind. He says he doesn't know what Butterfly and her men might do to her if he runs away. His answer hits her hard, but before she can respond, Butterfly gives a signal to her men. Suddenly, the thugs walk toward Nyla, carrying knives. Hayes watches in horror as he realizes what they're planning to do. Butterfly casually suggests that they cut Nyla's legs, forcing her into a wheelchair. She wonders aloud if Hayes would still care about her once she's like that. Nyla struggles wildly as the thugs get closer, fighting not just for herself but also out of anger and fear for Hayes. She tries to stop them, but she's tightly bound and can't move freely. Meanwhile, Hayes loses his patience. He begins shouting at Butterfly, warning her to let him go or someone powerful will come after all of them. Butterfly, unimpressed, asks him to name who he's talking about, but Hayes doesn't answer. She assumes he's bluffing and laughs softly, thinking he's only trying to scare her. His phone starts ringing, but Butterfly casually blocks him from answering, keeping him trapped beside her. However, just when things look hopeless, the building's door suddenly bursts open. Armed men rush inside. It's Prosecutor Jet, leading a full SWAT team. Jet quickly announces his name and rank as they enter, stunning everyone inside the building. The thugs freeze in disbelief, unable to understand why a government prosecutor would storm a place like this. Without wasting time, Jet orders his team to secure the area. The SWAT officers overpower Butterfly's gang and quickly move in to rescue both Hayes and Nyla. As they're being led out to safety, it becomes clear how Jet found them. While still tied up earlier, Hayes had secretly managed to send a rough, clumsy text message to Jet. Though the message was full of errors and hard to read, it gave Jet just enough information to track Hayes' location. Hayes explains this weakly to Jet, saying that sending even that much was the best he could manage under the circumstances. He admits that he couldn't even check the phone properly after sending the message, afraid that Butterfly would notice. Right at that moment, Hayes suddenly remembers Butterfly. He quickly looks around the room, searching for her, but realizes she's gone. Somehow, in the middle of the chaos, she managed to escape. Meanwhile, Butterfly is already far from the building, running as fast as she can. As she runs, she regrets not realizing sooner that the person Hayes mentioned was a prosecutor. Knowing this, she understands why everything fell apart so quickly. Still, despite her failure, she tells herself it's not over yet. In her mind, both Nyla and Hayes remain unfinished business. Back at the scene, Hayes immediately focuses on Nyla. He walks over to her, worried, and checks to see if she's all right. She's sitting quietly but clearly shaken. At the same time, this moment is the first time Prosecutor Jet gets a proper look at Nyla up close. He stands back for a moment, silently watching Hayes as he approaches her, curious about the girl Hayes risked so much to protect. As Hayes kneels beside her, Nyla asks why he didn't run away earlier when he had the chance. She reminds him that Donnie had told him to escape too, but he ignored that as well. Hayes, without hesitation, tells her that he couldn't just leave her behind. Then, Softly, he adds that he also didn't want to leave Donnie alone to fight those guys on his own. Seeing the bond between them, Jet steps forward, wanting to say something. Nyla notices him and quietly asks Hayes if he knows who this man is. Hayes explains that yes, he does know him from their school days. Realizing this, Nyla stands up slowly and reaches out to shake hands with Jet. After shaking his hand, she suddenly turns back toward Hayes without meeting his eyes and tells him coldly that they should never meet again. Her words hit Hayes like a heavy blow. He stands there, shocked, unable to understand why she's saying this. He tries to call her back, confused and hurt, but Nyla refuses to answer. Even Jet, standing nearby, watches in silence, unable to understand why Nyla is pushing Hayes away after everything. As Nyla walks away from them, her steps slow and heavy, tears quietly begin to fall down her face. Jet and Hayes don't say a single word to each other. They simply stand there, silently watching as Nyla walks away from them, her figure slowly disappearing in the distance. Both of them are left confused, unsure of what just happened or why she chose to push Hayes away so suddenly. Several days pass. One morning, Hayes walks to school as usual, but everything about him seems different. His face is cold and distant, showing no trace of his usual energy. As he moves through the school gates, one of his friends spots him from a distance and rushes over, hoping to greet him. He tries to tap Hayes gently on the shoulder to get his attention, but Hayes barely reacts. He shrugs the friend off without even looking, his expression dark and hollow. His friend steps back in shock, feeling uneasy seeing Hayes like that. After a few seconds, Hayes' expression softens slightly, but only to reveal sadness. He lets out a tired sigh and tells his friend quietly that he hasn't heard from Nyla for days. He explains that he's been calling her nonstop, but none of the calls are going through. He admits he's starting to wonder if she's blocked his number. His mind is full of doubts. He starts questioning whether Nyla pushed him away just because she found out he knew a prosecutor. He never expected the silence from her to hurt this much. Slowly, he begins to realize that Nyla might mean more to him than he thought. It surprises him how much her absence is affecting him. At school, his classmates notice the change too. They see him sitting quietly, lost in thought, clearly weighed down by something. Many of them feel sorry for him, hearing him occasionally mutter her name or sit silently for hours. Hayes' sadness becomes obvious to everyone around him. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Nyla is going through her own struggle. She thinks about Hayes constantly. Every day, she wonders if he's waiting for her call. Many times, she picks up her phone, tempted to contact him, but each time she hesitates. She can't forget the danger Hayes faced just because he was connected to her. She feels guilty, blaming herself for dragging him into a world he wasn't meant to be part of. The memory of Butterfly threatening him and of the fact that she herself couldn't protect him weighs heavily on her. In the end, it wasn't her who saved him. It was Prosecutor Jet. Nyla is already missing Hayes badly. No matter how much she tries to focus on her usual life, her thoughts keep returning to him. She wishes he was with her, sitting beside her like before. Even when one of her gang members comes with urgent information, she doesn't have the strength to listen. She coldly tells him to leave, not even letting him explain, as her mind refuses to focus on anything but Hayes. The silence between them feels unbearable, but she keeps forcing herself to believe that avoiding him is for his own good. Meanwhile, late one night, Butterfly walks alone along a quiet roadside. Her steps are slow and thoughtful, but soon she senses something wrong. She notices shadows moving behind her. A group of men is following her. She keeps walking, pretending not to notice, but when they keep closing the distance, she finally stops. Turning back sharply, she warns them to think twice before trying anything foolish. However, the men aren't intimidated. Instead, they laugh and let her know that they already know exactly who she is. They call out her nickname mockingly, reminding her of her failure to handle Mr. Yoon and his daughter, Nyla. Their words sting her pride. Hearing this, Butterfly narrows her eyes and asks them directly if their client sent them. The men confirm it without hesitation. They explain that because she failed the mission, she now has to pay the price. She realizes the truth. They were sent to punish her for messing up the job. Even though she knows she did fail, part of her feels it's unnecessary for her client to go this far. One of the men steps forward, ready to attack her. But before he can even touch her, Butterfly strikes fast. She drives the heel of her boot directly into his forehead. Blood sprays as the man collapses instantly, falling to the ground unconscious. Without slowing down, she goes after the second man. But before she can do anything, He drops to his knees, begging her to spare his life. Butterfly pauses, eyes cold with anger. She decides not to kill him right away. Instead, she toys with him, letting her fury simmer while deciding what to do next. Furious at being betrayed by the client who sent them, Butterfly takes out her phone and angrily transfers back the payment she received for the failed job. She sends a sharp message along with it, making it clear that she's done working for their gang. As far as she's concerned, they no longer deserve her skills. Meanwhile, in a quieter part of the city, Hayes returns home after another long, heavy day. His mother greets him at the door and gives him unexpected news. She tells him that the shop property has changed owners. She explains that a rough, intimidating man sold the property to someone else. Hayes listens quietly, processing the news. In his mind, he's just relieved. At least now, those people won't hold his family hostage anymore. Later that night, Hayes feels restless. Unable to stay inside any longer, he decides to take a slow walk through the quiet streets, hoping the fresh air will clear his mind. As he walks, his thoughts drift back to everything that has happened. He wonders if he has already become useless to Nyla's gang. Days have passed without any word from Nyla or her people. The silence makes him feel unwanted, like he no longer matters to them. The more he thinks about it, the heavier his heart feels. While he's lost in his thoughts, he suddenly hears someone call his name. Startled, he looks to his side. For a moment, he hopes, almost believes, it could be Nyla. But instead, standing there is Tina. Seeing her surprises him, but disappointment follows just as quickly. He can't hide it. His face stays blank and tired as he looks at her. Tina immediately notices the change in him. She sees that his expression is cold, his face long and distant. Concerned, she asks why he's looking like that, confused about what's bothering him so much. Tina tells Hayes that she's noticed something. She hasn't seen Nyla around him for a while. She asks casually if Nyla went somewhere, trying to sound light, but Hayes doesn't want to talk about it. He simply tells her not to worry about him. Tina, however, refuses to ignore it. She insists that she's worried about him and says she wants to help cheer him up, especially since it happens to be her day off. Before he can refuse, she grabs his hand gently and pulls him along with her, leading him toward a nearby restaurant. At the restaurant, after sitting down and eating quietly for a few minutes, Hayes finally speaks. He asks Tina directly why she's been keeping track of Nyla, admitting that he finds it strange she would know Nyla hasn't been around him lately. Tina can't deny it. She hesitates at first, but then nods, admitting the truth. She explains that, for some time now, she's been keeping an eye on Nyla's gang. Hearing this, Hayes immediately becomes more alert. He leans forward, asking her what she knows. He wants to understand what Nyla's gang has been up to. But Tina holds back. She simply says that she's noticed suspicious activity surrounding Nyla's gang, but doesn't go into detail. She tells Hayes that's all she can reveal. Then she warns him seriously not to get himself involved any further with those people. She explains that it's dangerous, and for his own good, he should step away. Hayes listens quietly and then thanks her for the advice. But his next words catch Tina off guard. He tells her softly that, right now, it feels like she's the only one who actually cares about him. Tina is left speechless, not expecting Hayes to say something like that. She stares at him, surprised, unable to find the right words. Once they finish eating, they both stand up to leave. Tina advises Hayes once more to head straight home and avoid trouble. They wave goodbye, and Tina walks away down the street. Hayes watches her leave for a moment, but as soon as she disappears from view, he makes up his mind. He turns in the opposite direction and starts running. He doesn't head home. Instead, he runs straight toward Nyla's office. As Hayes arrives at the entrance of Nyla's office, two large men, clearly Nyla's gang members, step in front of him. He tries to explain, saying he needs to see Nyla urgently, but before he can finish, one of the men punches him hard in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. When he tries to stand up and speak again, the second man lands a punch across his face, sending him to the ground. Struggling to lift himself, Hayes suddenly sees Donnie appear from inside. Hope flickers in Hayes' eyes. He thinks Donnie might listen. He tries to explain to Donnie that he needs to speak to Nyla, that it's important. But to his shock, Donnie walks straight up to him and beats him too. Donnie doesn't hold back, landing heavy punches until Hayes collapses again. When he's done, Donnie turns to the two gang members and coldly tells them that Nyla wants to see them inside. Without another word, all three of them leave Hayes lying outside, bleeding. Hayes lies there for a moment, dazed, wiping the blood from his mouth. He's confused, unsure if those men attacked him on Nyla's orders or if they acted on their own. Nothing makes sense anymore. While he's still sitting there, a black car pulls up and stops in front of him. The door opens, and a man steps out. It's Mr. Yoon, Nyla's father. He immediately recognizes Hayes. Calmly, Mr. Yoon addresses him, saying that he knows Hayes is close to his daughter. Hayes, confused and wary, asks who the man is. Mr. Yoon gestures to the car and tells Hayes to get in first. With no other option and too weak to argue, Hayes climbs into the car. As soon as he sits down, the driver pulls away, leaving Nyla's office behind. Inside the car, Hayes cautiously asks if Mr. Yoon was at Nyla's office on business with the gang. But Mr. Yoon shakes his head, explaining that he was only there to see his daughter. The realization hits Hayes like a shock. He's sitting beside Nyla's father. Even more surprising is that Mr. Yoon already knows who he is. He tells Hayes directly that he knows he's important to Nyla. Hayes doesn't know what to say. He tries to hide the truth, but Mr. Yoon can see right through him. Quietly, he asks if there's something going on between him and Nyla. Hayes stays silent, unsure how to answer, but Mr. Yoon can already read the truth from his expression. Mr. Yoon drives Hayes to a quiet spa and calmly tells him they'll be getting massages. Hayes looks around confused and finally asks why he brought him to such a place. Mr. Yoon answers bluntly that a spa is the only place where men truly open up and talk. Hayes thinks about it for a moment, but notices that they're not alone. Other people are there too. Feeling uncomfortable, he tells Mr. Yoon that this doesn't feel right, especially since he knows Hayes is his daughter's boyfriend. At those words, Mr. Yoon's expression shifts. His tone sharpens as he reminds Hayes that there's nothing wrong with bringing him here. After all, he knows Hayes has already been dumped. Hayes freezes, stunned. He didn't expect Mr. Yoon to know about that. The man's words hit him hard, leaving him unsure of what to say next. He begins to wonder why Mr. Yoon brought him along at all if he knows he's no longer with Nyla. Mr. Yoon, seeing Hayes' confusion, tells him to stop overthinking. He says they'll talk properly after they finish the massage. Hayes, still shocked, says nothing more as they're led into the spa treatment rooms, unsure of what exactly Mr. Yoon wants from him.